Hello everybody, this is Stephen House and this is MMA Latest News, and tomorrow night in Boston, UFC 220 is going to go down. And before it does, I think it's time that we put a little bit of respect on Stipe Miocic's name. The current heavyweight champion is on the cusp of breaking the record for most consecutive heavyweight title defences, which incredibly is only 3. Which shows you the absolute murderer's row that the heavyweight title has become. Now, the new name that is on the horizon, Francis Ngannou, wasn't even thinking of an MMA career 4 or 5 years ago when Stipe was already knocking people dead. Stipe's run to the heavyweight title has been one which is littered with the carcasses of legends of the sport. If he defends this at weekend and beats Francis Ngannou in the process, the new era, this new prodigy, the new essentially science project that the UFC is putting together at the UFC Performance Institute, then I think there's only one doubt about whether Stipe Miocic is the greatest heavyweight of all time. And I say that with no reservation. I say Stipe Miocic can become the greatest heavyweight of all time. I think he needs 2 wins to cement it. The first win that I think he needs to do is he needs to go out there, he needs to put on a clinic. He needs to put on a clinic that shows there's experience, there's nous, there's cagecraft, sort of things that I think, as exciting as Francis Ngannou is, and trust me, he is extremely excited, I did not expect to see what we saw against Overeem. And actually, I think they may have messed up a little bit in terms of how fast this title fight has come on the back of that Overeem thing. And this leads to a greater point, which I'm going to get into a little bit later on, in terms of how the UFC can create stars out of nothing. Because essentially, Ngannou has come from nothing. But let's get back to Stipe. So Stipe, if he beats Ngannou this weekend, has only one person, which I think he needs to beat, to absolutely cement his name as the greatest heavyweight of all time. And that's Cain Velasquez. Whether or not Cain Velasquez is in his prime right now, whether or not he's fighting fit and has got a big run and a big win together, I think all he has to do is get a match with Stipe, and for Stipe to beat him, and Stipe is going to be crowned the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. And I don't think that's up for debate at all. If you look at the names that he's beaten on his way to getting to the title, look at the names that he's beaten since defending the title, look at the absolute science project that stands in front of him in terms of Francis Ngannou, I think it's not even up for debate. It's not even up for debate. The manner in which he's done it as well has been absolutely devastating. He hasn't laid and prayed his way there. He hasn't been lucky, I don't think you could say. He's had wars, he's had flash knockouts, he's gone out there and he's won these fights. And I think that's what's... I'm not sure that if that's the reason why people are sleeping on him a little bit, but people are definitely sleeping on Stipe. Now, as I look ahead towards this fight against Francis Ngannou, I think this is a tough test. And I've wavered back and forth all week about who I think is going to win this. And make no mistake, I'm not saying Stipe is going to absolutely steamroller him. I'm saying is, up until now, what Stipe has done deserves our utmost respect. And if he beats him, and then he goes on and cements it by beating Cain, there is no argument for who the greatest heavyweight of all time is. But standing across the cage from him Saturday night will be the absolutely terrifying silhouette of Francis Ngannou. I didn't think the matchup of Alistair Overeem was a good one for Francis Ngannou. I thought he was going to be too crafty. I thought he was going to be too experienced in striking. But when he came out, he looked timid. He was leaning backwards. It wasn't the sort of confident performance that you would expect with someone with the experience that Alistair Overeem's got. That means that Alistair Overeem was fearful of the punching power of Francis Ngannou. And probably rightly so, because he ended up asleep on the back end of a left uppercut from him. So, how's this going to go down with Stipe? I see Stipe as being someone who comes forward, really aggressive, likes to fight inside the pocket. He fights short. And I think that is possibly where he's going to get an advantage. Ngannou's got a massive reach advantage over him, but I think you can dirty box him a little bit. I think you can get on the inside of him, and I think you can go to the body, you can come to the head, and he's going to have to make him grapple. He's probably going to have to try a takedown, and I think the threat of the takedown might be enough to pull his hands down away from his face and try and land one in the head. And I think if he can do that, then Stipe, as we've seen, can knock out any man in the world. The list of KOs that he's got to his name are frankly phenomenal. Ngannou's getting there, and I think it's going to be a very interesting test. I just feel the heavyweight title fight has come too soon for Ngannou. I like the fact that he's moved to the Performance Institute. I like the fact that he's working on every single aspect of his game, and he's clearly learning extremely fast. But this is the heavyweight title we're talking about. If he does it, then I wouldn't like to think what sort of man can take this title off him. If he doesn't do it, I definitely see a future rematch with Stipe on the cards, providing it's a competitive fight. But man, I am looking forward to this on Saturday. Let me know in the comments what you think of in terms of prediction, who's going to take it, how they're going to take it. My reserve prediction is going to be a Stipe knockout round 2. But I might be putting a little bit of money on a first round knockout by Ngannou as well, because I just don't know what's going to happen if he connects with Stipe, and I do expect him to connect with Stipe. Second fight that we're going to be talking about then is it's the other big boys. We've got the heavyweights, we've got the light heavyweights on this card, and that is Daniel Cormier against Ozdemir. And I think this is if we talk about an experienced mismatch in the heavyweight title fight, now this is an experienced mismatch. I don't think Ozdemir belongs in there. I don't think I'm being rude by saying that. I think Daniel Cormier is the best light heavyweight on the planet that can pass a drugs test. There's only one man that can beat him, and I don't know if that's as much mental as it is physical with John Jones, but I think DC beats him. I'm not sure it's going to be an early stoppage. I think there might be a submission in this. I'm going to say a third round submission or DC by overwhelming unanimous decision. I don't think there's as much to talk about in this fight. I just don't see Ozdemir having the tools to put him away. If he can take the strikes of some of the people that he's fought in the past, the likes of Rumble Johnson, I don't see Ozdemir being any more powerful than that. I don't see him being any more skilled than that. I just don't see how he beats him. Fully expecting this to be completely wrong, but I'm pretty confident in what I'm saying here, that I don't think Daniel Cormier needs to be worried on Saturday night. I think he's going to win his belt back. So at the moment he's been given the championship. This is an opportunity for him to win his belt back and then see what happens in the future. I don't think Ozdemir is going to be a roadblock for him whatsoever. Which brings us on to Bellator. Bellator 192. Why Bellator still doing the delayed broadcasting, I have no idea how they think that's a good idea and how that's going to grow the sport in the slightest. The two fights that we're going to be talking about, Douglas Lima and Rory McDonald, I think this is the most exciting fight on the card. This is the fight that really should be the top of the bill. It's Bellator doing Bellator things, isn't it? I think Rory's probably got the overall skills, but Lima's got that absolute dead-eye streak in him that this could be a UFC fight. These two guys really have got a legitimate claim to being in the top 4 or 5 welterweights in the world. I think this is going to be an absolute war. There's going to be shades of Lawler and McDonald in this one, I think. And I'm going to say I think Rory McDonald edges it just a little bit. I just think he's got a little bit more pedigree about him. I think it's time for him to shine. And I think he's going to take the belt this weekend. Which leads us to the headline. And I'm thinking, I don't know how Chael Sonnen's managed to get himself into a fight here with Rampage. That alone is kind of crazy. If the old Rampage turns up, Chael's going to sleep. Can Chael take him down? I think he's going to have the speed on him, but I think he's going to struggle to take him down. That being said, I think there's less miles on the clock for Chael Sonnen. Or what I perceive to be less miles on the clock for Chael Sonnen. This is a tough one to call. I've got to put Rampage as the favourite, and I've got to pick Rampage, I think, on this one, even though I do love Chael Sonnen. I'm going to have to say Rampage by second round stoppage. Again, let me know what you guys think for all of these in the comments below. A little bit of breaking news that we've had this week then is Tony Ferguson is going to be fighting for Khabib at UFC 223 in Brooklyn in April. And that seems to have been the stripping of Conor McGregor at the same time. There's a talk that this is for the lightweight title, not an interim title. Just seems to be saying the lightweight title. So Conor McGregor has been stripped. Not that I think it matters. Conor McGregor could turn up in someone's backyard and it's still going to do record-breaking pay-per-views with or without a belt. We all know that Conor brings the pay-per-view. He doesn't need that around his waist to be selling anything. And think about it. Whoever wins this fight is probably going to be the fight for Conor. And we all know exactly what he's going to be saying in the build-up to that, don't you? That's my belt. You didn't beat me. That's mine. All that sort of stuff. So, I think you're going to be in for a weird trilogy with these three. I think Tony can beat Khabib. I think Conor can beat Tony. And I think Khabib beats Conor. And I think the belt, if you end up having those three just rotating, the belt could change hands every couple of months, if they fight every couple of months. I don't see how Conor's going to evade the takedown of Khabib. I think when Khabib takes Tony down, he's going to be in a lot of danger with Khabib's jits on the ground. And I think Tony's going to get caught if he fights Conor, and I don't think he's going to push for the takedown himself. And I think Conor beats him. I think it's literally just going to bounce around from one to the other unless somebody else in that division can pop up and make it interesting with a fourth wheel. Obviously, they're trying to set up something in Russia. I think September is the time that they're looking. And I think that would be a very interesting time. I bet the UFC's kind of like, let's hope it's Tony. So let's hope it's Khabib that wins and he beats Tony. And then Khabib versus Conor in Russia. I mean, and I'm thinking all kinds of Rocky IV sort of montages going on here. Maybe that's just me. But that's what I'm feeling. And I can't wait to see it, actually. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't mind getting out to Russia for that one, actually, because I can imagine that's just on another level of crazy. And the final one I'm going to talk about before I get to the questions that you guys have hit me up with on Twitter is Michael Bisping and Vitor Belfort. So Vitor's fight got canned at the weekend because of Uriah Hall's weight cutting problem, which left a very obvious rematch on the cards. Was it 2013? 2013 when TRT Vitor knocked out Michael Bisping. And he's paid a couple of the ghosts of his past after winning the UFC middleweight title and then managing to avenge the Dan Henderson loss. This would seem like a really fitting way to go. We know the retirement is on the horizon for Michael Bisping. It's also on the horizon for Vitor Belfort. It made a lot of sense in a lot of people's eyes. We got a party here. Let's put these two together at UFC London. And Bisping said no. And I'm gutted Bisping said no. But I completely respect his decision to do so. I'm going to read a quote out from Bisping's own podcast where he says, "I'm not fighting Vitor Belfort in London. 100% I'm not fighting him. 0% chance. This is if I fight in London, it's my last ever fight, and I don't want to handle myself the way I handle myself the majority of the time. I don't want it to be some bitter rivalry with a guy that has caused me lasting disfigurement," obviously with his eye, "and that I'm emotionally charged up against. I'd rather go out there, put my best foot forward, enjoy the moment, fight somebody that I respect, somebody that's going to be a challenge, but I have a lot of respect for, and do it in a classy way." I absolutely respect his decision there. I mean, there's an argument to be made that he only lost to people that was juiced up, obviously prior to the recent defeat that he's had. But I think, or the recent defeats that he's had, should we say. I think it's his prerogative who he fights in his final match. I think I would have loved to have seen him fight Vitor. I think that would have been a very fitting end to a career for both of them to go out in that way. They're both retiring and walking away from the sport, and it would have been a big chance for us to say thank you to both of those warriors. But I also completely respect his decision to not have to go out fighting against someone that has left him a permanent disfigurement. So I think he's fair enough in saying what he said. Now, I don't know who that leaves us with in terms of options for Michael Bisping to be fighting. Let me know in the comments who you guys think would be a good opponent for him. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. And it's fast approaching. I think tickets go on sale in the next week for those of us in the UK. So make sure you're quick because it will sell out as usual. Right, let's get to the fan questions then and see what you guys have been saying, if I can find them. Here we go. Okay, so Peter Parker says, "My top 5 wish list for fights in 2018, and tell us why you want to see them or what particular interests you in them." Tony and Khabib, Conor and Khabib as 2 instant ones. Let me just pull up the rankings and have a think. There's obvious reasons why I want to see that. I think it's fair to say. I want to see TJ Dillashaw and Mighty Mouse, because I want to see Mighty Mouse challenge with someone. Whether that means moving up, Dillashaw said he can move down and make 125. But whether that means moving up or what, I think in fighting somebody of the caliber of Dillashaw and beating him can definitely cement Mighty Mouse's claim to being one of the pound-for-pound all-time greats of the sport. And I think that's the only sort of challenge that you've really got for someone like Mighty Mouse. I would say at lightweight, yeah, it's those two. It's Tony, Khabib, and Conor, essentially. At welterweight, I haven't got a lot of interest in watching Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley. I wouldn't mind seeing Tyron against GSP to see where they both stack up against each other. Darren Till's probably a little bit far out of there, but I'm interested in seeing, as a Brit, what Darren Till can do. I wouldn't mind seeing Darren Till against somebody like Lawler, because I think that would be an absolute war. I'd be very interested in seeing that one. At featherweight, I got to admit, there's not a lot screaming out at me at featherweight. Middleweight, we need to see Robert Whittaker and, well, we need to see Robert Whittaker and Yoel Romero, I think. I wouldn't mind seeing Chris Weidman getting back into the mix in there, but who he fights on that one, I don't know. At light heavyweight, I would like to see John Jones come back, but we have no idea when that's likely to be. It sounds like he's going to be getting a heavier sentence than he got last time, so I wouldn't expect him to be doing anything. Which means it's probably going to be Gustafsson and Cormier. And at heavyweight, do you know what? Regardless of whether he wins the title or not, and I don't think that Hunt's getting a title shot, but if Ngannou doesn't beat Stipe this weekend, I wouldn't mind seeing Mark Hunt against Ngannou, just to see. Aside from that, there's not really a ton of obvious fights to make, I don't think. There's definitely fun fights, but in terms of the top 3, top 5 in each division, I think they're all pretty set. Unless there's a big shock, I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of those miss out. I wouldn't mind seeing Beneil Dariush against somebody like a bit of a bigger name. Justin Gaethje maybe, to see what he's up to, or maybe even Nate Diaz, someone along those lines. I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing Edson Barbosa get back on the horse as well after the brutal beating he took against Khabib. Maybe Barbosa against Diaz would be a fun fight. Barbosa, Gaethje, maybe. There's a lot of good fights to be made at lightweight, but the only ones that have got a real title interest is those 3. I don't think there's anyone can touch those 3 at the moment. That's Tony, Khabib, and Conor, obviously. And I'd just love to see Conor back in the octagon again, to be brutally honest. Matthew says, with Francis basically living at the UFC Performance Institute Centre in Vegas, do I think the UFC brass are pushing for him to be the next champ? Another European champion would be good for the sport in Europe, and also in France, where cage fighting is illegal. MMA is not illegal, but fighting in a cage is illegal, so they have to fight in rings. Also, the fact that he's originally from Cameroon and from Africa, I think is really good for the sport to have a good foothold there. And a heavyweight champion, I think that opens a lot of doors for the sport in Africa, and I'd be very excited at seeing that. Do I think the UFC thinks that? I think that the UFC doesn't really mind, but as I said earlier, I was going to get to this. Now, I've been saying for a while that the UFC can choose who they decide to make stars of. They decided to make a star out of Conor, partly on the back of Conor's performances and his personality, but they also chose to make a star out of him. You know, they're spending £1 million doing music video style promotions. I've never seen one of them for DJ. I've never seen one of those for Stipe. So Conor McGregor getting all this sort of stuff, that's the UFC pushing him forward. They're pushing him forward to go on talk shows. They're pushing him forward to be on these world tours and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's fine. I've got no issue with that. But I just think that the UFC picks and chooses who it decides to make stars out of. And they could definitely make stars. I mean, they're sitting here at the moment complaining they haven't really got any big stars. We've lost Ronda, we've lost Conor, we haven't got Brock anymore. GSP's sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Well, let's make a star. You've got some unbelievable fighters here. Stipe Miocic you can make a world star out of, especially if he becomes on paper at least, the greatest heavyweight. You've got Tyron Woodley you could absolutely make a star out of. He's absolutely terrifying. You've got Khabib you can make a star out of across Russia. There's stars in every single division that they should be. Wonderboy. There's people you can be making stars out of and making these fights big, but they don't. Or they choose weird people to make stars out of. Like, I think they probably put more into CM Punk's fight than they have done ever for Mighty Mouse. I think that's a bit wrong. So do I think the UFC are pushing for it? I think they wouldn't be upset if it was Francis that won, to be honest. How badly do I think Khabib will beat Tony at UFC 223? From someone I can't pronounce, but he's got a Khabib profile picture, so obviously coming at me from that. I think Tony beats him. I think it goes 3-4 rounds, and I think Tony catches him probably in a triangle or something along those lines. Scary off his back, Tony Ferguson. I think that's how he wins. Adam says, is Stipe the GOAT heavyweight if he beats Ngannou? Sort of touched on that one earlier. Yes, with a caveat that should he fight Kane, and I hope that the UFC can try and make that happen, then he's undoubtedly the greatest heavyweight we've ever seen. Stipe or Francis, how long will the winner be champion for? Well, that's a different question. I'm on the edge. I think first round Ngannou, second round Stipe. How long will the winner be champion for? If Stipe wins, I'm not sure who they can bring up next to challenge him. I mean, Derek Lewis? No. Curtis Blades? No. You're looking at Kane. Kane could beat him. Kane could outwork him. But if he beats Kane, then he's the greatest of all time. And I don't know where the next threat comes from. What do you guys think? Who's likely to beat Stipe? And if it is Ngannou, who's likely to beat Ngannou? I think someone with a real good wrestling game. And I'm not sure how much of Stipe's wrestling game we're going to see, because we haven't seen a lot of it recently, at least. Was that it? That might have been it. I think that was it. I'm sure I saw more, but I think that might have been it. It's the only ones that's coming up so far. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to make this a weekly thing, probably more likely on a Wednesday than on a Friday, but we'll see how it goes. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to MMA Latest. I'll be doing a watch along on the True Geordie channel tomorrow on the Knockout, so make sure to join us on that for the fights. Hit me up on Twitter next time around if you've got any questions that you would like me to answer in this one. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.